All right, hello everyone. I've been getting some questions that I want to try to answer, in particular to help you out as we near our quiz on Friday, okay? And the questions for today are primarily around the alternating series test, and then I want to show you some resources I'm going to put up to try to help you organize your thoughts around these tests, okay? Um, One of the main questions that I'm getting right now is essentially, and this is something that Allison had said in an email to me, but is something that is causing some problem, which is basically how in the alternating series test, how do you find what is UN? What is the thing that's being changed? And In my description of sort of the alternating series test, we had talked about like -1 to the n plus 1 times u sub n. All right, and I'm going to use a problem that you already have in the 10.5 lesson packet. And I had us look at a series that looks like this and explain why the alternating series test cannot be applied to it. And the series looks something like this: 1 over the cube root of 2 minus 4, ooh, not plus, minus 1 over the cube root of 3 plus 6 plus 1 over the cube root of 4 minus 8 minus 1 over the cube root of 5 plus 10, and so on. And this question is a good question. When we look at series written out, and we've actually like evaluated each of the terms, often as for alternating series, we'll just see that this -1 to the n plus 1 or -1 to the n, we can just assume that these signs that we're seeing here are all what's coming from that part of this. The u sub n part is the other stuff that we see. So this would be u sub n, or u sub 1, we could say, or u sub 0. This one or whatever, actually for this specific problem, I guess this one I had done not a +1 for this one. So ignore that. Although some alternating series tests n plus 1 is fine, but this one, if I wrote out the actual summation notation, would not have a +1 there. Regardless, this would be our u sub 1 or whatever. This one would be our u sub 2 or whatever. Our next one would be u sub 3. So basically ignoring the signs that we're seeing in front when we see something written out like this is often standard how we look at identifying our alternating series when we write it out that way, that this part here is our u sub n. Sometimes you'll see people talking about it work with like absolute values of this stuff. We need to compare the absolute value of everything. I like to just take the signs at the face value and take a look at each of these. And then this is where I can start saying, okay, if I want to apply my alternating series test, I know that in fact then, one, that my series actually needs to alternate, right? It actually needs to alternate, which means for us that the things I have circled have to stay positive the whole time, because the negative plus, that's already alternating. If the circled things, if they aren't all positive, then I run into sign flipping things that don't actually follow an alternating pattern. So I can take a look at one of these and say, okay, 1 over cube root of 2 minus 4, right? Cube root of 2 minus 4. So I can say cube root of 2 minus 4 and try to figure out then what is that value going to be. And the cube root of 2 minus 4 is something like, in this first problem, would be 1 over negative 2.7 something. All right. So that first one's actually negative, interesting. Let's just check the next one. So this would be minus, what is this going to be? This is going to be 1 over cube root of 3 plus 6. That's going to be positive, so don't have to. So this is, I'm already seeing the problem now, right? When I just basically leave the signs as they are and evaluate the circled thing, I'm now seeing that this series, in fact, doesn't alternate. It doesn't alternate because this first term, 1 over this stuff, actually is negative. Then minus this circle term, which is my u sub n, is actually positive here. So it's minus a positive. And then I have a plus. This would end up being negative. So I basically end up with essentially everything negative all the way through this whole series. So the alternating series test does not apply, essentially because in this case, the things that look like they are u sub n the things without the plus minuses between them that are part of the sum in this -1, the circled things aren't always positive. So in this case, we would say that something like u sub n or a sub n, whatever we're calling it, is not always greater than 0. Okay, so in regards to that question, that's what we're going to look for. That the things without the plus minus signs that link all of our terms stay always positive. So I hope that that answers the question. Give me a second. Cool. So hopefully that answers that. The other question that I'm seeing come up is to basically clarify if we want to test whether or not un is positive, should we ignore that sign? And as long as the series then is alternating. If I'm understanding this question correctly, that if we're looking at some series, let's do like an alternating series like this. Maybe we want to do like the sum from n equals 0 to infinity of like -1 to the, let's say -1 to the n times 1 over n plus 1 or something fairly basic like this. That if we actually work out the terms here, I want to write it out with the plus minus kind of notation. Plug in 0, that'll give me 1, 1 over 1, so this first term is 1, plus, plug in, now I'm at 1, so -1 to the 1, that's -1. So this is going to be plus -1 times, plug in 1 down here, 1 over 2. Plus, when I plug in 2 now, n is 2, -1 squared, that's positive. 1 over 2 plus 1 is 3. So this is going to be 1 over 3. The next one will be plus -1 over 4, and so on. If I actually write it out in this notation up here so I can see the plus or minus signs, I'd have 1 minus half plus 1/3 minus 1/4, and so on. Now, if I'm looking at this series, and I'm just trying to figure out does the alternating series test work, can I use the alternating series test? Then yes, we can kind of just ignore these signs here, and as long as the number without the signs or the thing without the signs are always positive, then great. The alternating series test criteria number 1 works, because I now know that based off of this, the only thing that's actually alternating is the u sub n or a sub n part over here. This is the only thing that's this u sub n, a sub n is always positive. This -1 is the only thing that's actually changing sign. So my criteria number 1 for the alternating series that u sub n is greater than 0 works. Criteria number 2, is this series going to decrease? That's a question that's been coming up. That basically what I want to know is I want to make sure that eventually a sub n, a term is greater than the term after it, is really what I'm looking for in the end for that criteria number 2. And I know that's a little confusing, because one of the questions is, if the values of a sub n plus 1 oscillate, and it turns out to be greater than a sub n, then it would fail the second rule. And if that's going to be the case all the way through, then yes. If all the way through we end up with this repeated, this thing is actually bigger than the previous term, then it will fail, yes. The alternating series test will always oscillate, but if our a sub n, kind of ignoring again our negative signs here, if the actual number here that's sitting here to be our a sub n plus 1 ends up being greater than the thing before it regularly, and that will never go away, then it fails. But in this test, in this case here, we can always just see in the pattern that 1 is bigger than half, is bigger than 1/3, is bigger than 1/4, so this will always be true. However, if you're, again, ignoring the minus signs, just looking at the actual numbers here, the absolute value of the whole thing, basically ignoring the minus signs, if you end up with a situation where it's like 1, then half, and then 2, and then 1/4, and then 3, and then 1/5, the fact that we keep bouncing up and then back down and then up and then back down, that will never go away, that would cause this to fail. In this case, it works. And then number 3, our last thing, we eventually want that this term here goes to 0. So 1 over, we want the limit as n approaches infinity of, let me write that back out, the limit as n approaches infinity of 1 over n plus 1. Does it go to 0? And it does. So in this case, this series pass the alternating series test and it will converge. I hope that conversation helps clarify some of those questions. And if not, please do keep them coming. I want to know exactly what's going through your mind and try to help out with that. Quick summary. If we have a series written out, we can see the terms and the plus or minuses. If we want to figure out if it passes the alternating series test, just look at the terms without the plus minuses between them. Make sure that the terms are always positive. In this case, they're not. You'll end up with negatives, positive. The actual terms here will alternate and make a series of minus things happen. Okay. Other big point here is ignoring the minus signs. We want the term to be smaller than the term before it eventually. If you do end up with some sort of oscillating pattern, that will always happen where the next term is bigger and then it's smaller and then it's bigger and then it's smaller and then it's bigger and then it's smaller, then that will make our alternating series test fail. And always check the limit at the end to make sure the limit ignoring then minus 1 to the whatever power, make sure that limit goes to 0. The last thing I want to bring up here that I want you to call your attention to is as questions and stuff come in, I am going to post some help on my website. I'll show you here in a second, because one of the things that keeps coming up is trying to organize in your mind the different convergence tests, and accidentally mixing them up. So I'm going to post some flowcharts and some study guides to help you. If you find them useful, they're good. They might not use the language that we use, but they are a good way to begin to organize your thoughts if you are studying. Sometimes they'll talk about tests or things we've not talked about yet, which is fine. Go to the things that we have talked about, and that information is there. They might talk about it a little different way, but it is there. So let me show you where that will be. If you go to my website, you'll find that I will update very soon. Along here, next to where it says questions, I have the question form. I'm going to put resources that answer people's questions up over here. So like the study guides, the flow charts of the test will be here, as well as this video and other videos I post in answering people's questions. You'll see live over here on the side, okay? Have a great day. Please keep giving me questions, and if I didn't answer yours here, please clarify with me so I can actually answer your question. You can call me or whatever, and we can talk through whatever questions you have in real time. Thanks. Bye.